Okay. Ted, thank you so much for joining me. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself to the community?
Yes, thanks, Alex, and thank you to Red, White, and Bloomington for the opportunity to interview. My name's Ted Moore. I am a stay-at-home parent here in Bloomington. I have two kids in the district, one at Jefferson and one at Olson Middle School. I've been pretty heavily involved in the school district since we moved here 5 years ago. A lot of PTA work and some district advisory council work. And I think I'm kind of focused as a candidate for school board on maintaining the educational excellence that we have here in Bloomington, making sure that everybody kind of knows and appreciates just how good our schools are, and ensuring that they stay open and equitable and inclusive for all our students. My focus is primarily on making sure that all of our students feel safe, seen, and supported in the school environment.
Excellent. So that's some great background around your connection to Bloomington. You are running for school board, just to make that clear. Tell me a bit about your personal and professional experiences. What most shaped your perspective on public education?
Okay, well, I suppose I am a product of public education, kindergarten through law school, and so for me, I support it reflexively. It's not something that I've ever questioned. My kind of commitment and appreciation for public education probably deepened, I would say, as a parent. Like I said, I am an at-home parent, and I've spent a lot of time volunteering with PTAs and inside schools.
Sure.
And I think the more time you spend inside our schools and see how teachers, staff, and students interact and how it works on a daily basis, you really begin to appreciate not just how much work goes into it, but how enthusiastic and professional everybody is and the difference it makes in kids' lives. I think that really is something that, again, deepened my appreciation for public education.
Sure. Along those lines of, talking about what you find with appreciation of public education, tell me a bit about what makes now the right time for you to enter public service.
Yeah. Well, one is timing. As an at-home parent, when the kids were younger, I was probably a little bit more crunched for time, and I don't know that I would have had the mental capacity to handle something like this.
Sure.
But they're older now. They need me a little bit less, and the constraints on my time aren't quite so much. So that was one part of it. But I think the other part is, this is something I think I can do. And I'm tired of sitting at home and complaining about the way other people do things. So I thought this is the time to raise my hand and say, I'm ready, I can serve, I can do a good job. Even though it's slightly embarrassing to say that, I think, to say, hey, I can do this better than anybody else. I don't know that that's true, but I think I can do a good job. And so I think that's why it's the right time for me.
Yeah, that's great. So getting into a little bit more of the issues of it, tell me about what you think the mission of public school is in 2025.
Yeah, so I think our core mission is probably to prepare resilient and confident students who are future ready and possess the skills that they need for college and career and for citizenship in our country. I think that's what public education is all about.
All right, perfect. How do you define student success? How should we measure it beyond test scores?
Well, everybody wants good test scores, right? That's how we are measured as a district, that's how we're measured as a state, that's how we're measured as a country, and those are very important. But as you say, there are other aspects, and I think that kind of goes back to creating resilient and confident individuals. We, I think, need to have an appreciation for a whole of student approach to education, something that considers their social and emotional well-being, not just their academic success. And I don't know how exactly to measure that. I suppose, you want to see reports from, the district does surveys with students around mental health, stress, things like that.
Sure.
I think in those measurables, we want to see, that our students feel all right, that they feel well adjusted, that they feel supported. And I think for me, that part of public education is indistinguishable from the academic part, because you can't perform well academically if you don't feel well emotionally or socially.
Sure, absolutely. Share with me some information about how you think it could help with engagement to create students that are civically activated and really want to participate in the community.
Yeah, well, I think that's critical. I mean, let's see. I talk about this to anybody who will spend the time and listen. John Adams wrote that liberty cannot be preserved without general, how would he say, general education amongst the public. And here in Minnesota, in our state constitution, we are required as a state to pay for public education. And the reason for that in Article 13 of our constitution is that the security of a republic cannot last without an intelligent public, civically engaged public. And I think that that's a critical mission for public education. And I think for me it goes beyond civics class. It gets to kind of the other part of public education, which said it's public. It's for everybody.
Sure.
And I think that, it's to promote individuals who have a appreciation for kind of, a liberal humanism, not liberal in the, American political sense of the word, but in the Enlightenment philosophy sense of the word,
Sure.
the founding principles of our country. We know and respect each other as individuals, and part of that comes about through engagement with each other in spaces where we can't avoid each other. And I think that public education provides that for children.
Okay, absolutely. So essentially you're saying that there's a lot of a person that can be raised when a student is encouraged to interact with their fellow students, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that that's unavoidable if you are a student in public education.
Okay, perfect. So with Bloomington being so diverse and one of the larger suburbs in the second ring suburbs, what do you view as some of the larger issues that are facing the student population today?
So I think I'll start with early literacy assessment. I think is one area where Bloomington can improve, and we test well as a school district against Minnesota. Minnesota tests well against the country, and we tend to be above or average to slightly above average in math and science, but we tend to be slightly below average in literacy. And so I think one area for improvement would be early intervention assessment for literacy to try and get those numbers up, because the best way to help students is to identify students who might need a little extra support early and start giving that to them earlier rather than later. I think ideally you want to make those identifications before third grade. Let's see, something else that we could probably improve on in here. Well, this isn't a Bloomington problem, this is a national problem, but strengthening our workforce. We have a pipeline issue and we have a retention issue.
Sure.
Fewer younger people are reporting that they're interested in becoming public educators, and the teachers we do have report higher degrees of burnout and stress than they have in the past. And so I think we need to partner with our unions to find ways to, renew dignity to public education service for teachers and staff. I think for a long time in America they've been treated as sort of a, stomping ground, or that's not the right phrase, but they've been treated poorly. Okay. And it's been used kind of as a political cudgel to punish people, to denigrate teachers and the work that they do. And I think that we need to push back against that, because as I said, I think once you're in the schools and once you see what teachers do on a day-to-day basis, there's no mistaking how excellent they are and how professional they are and how much of a difference they make in children's lives.
Absolutely. So you see yourself as a strong advocate for that student-to-teacher pipeline, and also treating teachers with respect and making sure that they're getting the resources that they need as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that those are two critical components for Bloomington Public Schools, well, public schools in general, but certainly here in Bloomington.
Okay, perfect. So tell me about a bit of your approach to declining enrollment, budget constraints, and then we talked a bit about staffing, but what about staffing shortages?
Yeah, well, let's start with, sorry, what was the first one?
First one was declining enrollment.
Declining enrollment, yes, always a problem, always an issue. Well, right now the district has what they call Operation Enrollment. And, these are basically exit interviews with parents who are choosing to remove their kids from Bloomington Public Schools and put them in other either districts through open enrollment or charter schools or private schools.
Sure.
Why are you leaving? What could have kept you here, right? And the purpose of that is twofold. One, I think we want to identify areas where we can competitively offer programming where it would be cost efficient for us to offer that programming to try and draw some of those families back or retain families in the future. But another one is, we do as a district pretty well in terms of open enrollment. So we also want to identify what's working for us currently. Can we make it more robust? Can we make it a stronger pull to attract more families from outside the district?
Sure.
So I think that that's part of what we need to do with enrollment. The other part probably ties into the second thing, which is budget constraints. Well, definitely does. And, budget constraints are a problem in public education. Here in Minnesota, in terms of real dollars, over the last 20 years, our budgets are down about 17%. And that's because we haven't been getting, until the last couple of years, we had not been getting inflation-adjusted raises for public education spending at the state level.
Okay, sure.
So our budgets are in a problem. Our budgets are a problem. And so, I don't know. Nobody wants to talk about cuts, but they're a reality. And I think that when they become inescapable, the process around how you identify those cuts needs to be one that focuses on making sure that they're equitable and that they're distributed across the district in ways that, try and minimize as much as possible a disruption on classroom education. So I think that you do that by engaging all the stakeholders, your teachers, your students, your staff, your parents. You identify what's mission critical, what are core values as expressed in our strategic plan, and you try to align your spending as best you can with those principles.
Okay, so along those lines with budget allocation, when there is cuts to be made, how much of an impact do you think that has in addressing staffing shortages? Would you say that you're more on the lines of trying to find creative ways to cut budget that keeps staff, or how would you kind of summarize your position on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we talk about strengthening the workforce, one thing that's probably very critical to teachers is classroom size, student to teacher ratio. And so if you're talking about cuts, oftentimes the easiest way to do that is to cut staff, teachers and other staff, support staff in terms of paras, things like that. But then that has a really meaningful impact on the day-to-day lives of our teachers and staff, and then it creates a cycle. So certainly I want to keep cuts away from anything that would affect our staffing levels.
Perfect. So we mentioned equity being a very important thing in Bloomington. Tell me about how you would ensure students, regardless of background, have access to the same opportunities and support.
Yeah, well, I think that as a board, equity always needs to be centered in their decision-making, in our decision-making, hopefully. And I think that right now, there are things that Bloomington is doing that kind of model what we should be doing, right? So we're a partner with the Minnesota Department of Education in their, I can't remember what they call it, some zones of innovation or something like that.
Sure.
And the upshot is now in Bloomington, it's called the Pathways to Graduation program to help bolster support services for English language learners to make sure that their educational opportunities are just as robust. Another thing we're doing is we're wrapping up a 3-year study on engagement amongst middle schoolers and high schoolers with a specific focus on our Black and Latino students to make sure that our measured outcomes are aligning with engagement in the classroom. So these are examples of things that Bloomington's already doing, and I think that they need to continue doing, right? As I said, we need to center equity in our discussions, and then we need to focus on data-driven solutions because we all know that racial and economic disparities in education is among the most persistent problems in American education.
Sure.
This isn't something that's new, and it's not something that's shown any sign of going away. So we need to identify and attempt to implement solutions. We need to monitor them, and if they're not working, we need to pivot and we need to move on to something else.
Okay, so obviously right now school boards are a contentious issue. Tell me a bit about your approach to handling conflict with other board members. How would you make people, or how would you find consensus on an initiative and work with anybody that might not be on the same page?
Sure. Well, I think you always have to ground yourself in listening. Listen first, talk second. Yeah, I don't think that's it. I think it's listen first, second, and third. I don't remember. Anyway, listen a lot. But I think the other thing is that these hot button topics can feel big and unbridgeable out of context. And the way we recontextualize them is we ground all of our discussions in our values as a district. What is public education meant to do? What do we want public education to do? And we find those answers in our strategic plan. So for any discussion, no matter how contentious it gets, I think we need to go back to those values, discuss it in the light of those values, and then I think we can oftentimes start to find some consensus. We might not agree on everything,
Sure.
but if you start small, sometimes you can find big solutions.
Okay, yeah, that's great. All right, so let's talk a bit about engagement and accountability. Tell me about how you envision Bloomington Public Schools interacting with parents and then also students outside of the classroom and then other kind of ancillary educators that aren't necessarily teachers.
Sure. Yeah, so that's a good one. I think the school board has, every year they assign each school board member a chunk of schools and other buildings that include a transportation services building and things like that, and they assign them as ambassadors. And I think that that's a really good way to help create accountability and transparency at the school board level. Because the idea is you take those schools for which you're an ambassador and you get in the buildings as much as possible. You go to the PTA meetings, you attend events, even events that you're not actually probably an ambassador for, right? Like all the high school musicals, all the high school plays, all the middle school performances. You get out there, you go to the sporting events, you go to the fine arts performances, you go to staff meetings, you talk to everybody, you listen to everybody, and you create so many points of contact that everybody knows you're available. Nobody thinks, oh man, there's only one way I can reach Ted. Everybody knows, oh, if I missed him or if I forgot to say something this one time that I saw him, I'm going to see him next week or I'm going to see him in 2 weeks.
Sure.
And so I think that those are great ways to informally get out there and talk to people about what's on their mind, what concerns them, issues that they see in the schools. So, yeah, I suppose that.
Okay, perfect. So you obviously mentioned a lot of communication and oversharing. Tell me a bit about any other sort of like bureaucratic transparency that you also want to represent.
Yeah, well, I think Bloomington is a transparent district. All our meetings are public. All of them are recorded. You can attend in person. I've been doing that to try and educate myself a little bit more. And I encourage everybody who's interested to do that. So I think, yeah, I guess I think we're doing it. It's just maybe sometimes a question of communicating what we're doing. Because the other thing is, when the school board speaks, it's only with one voice, even though there's 7 individual members. And so it's not like each school board member can be out there explaining in detail all of the policy that they pass.
Sure.
That's not their job. That's not what they should be doing. That's a job for district administration. So I think that then it falls on the school board to make sure that they're holding the district administration to account, that they have an appropriate, media policy and community engagement policy. And I think in Bloomington we do. I think it's pretty robust.
Okay. Along those lines, what do you think is missing from that communication pipeline, if there is anything?
Well, I think that it's always evolving, right? I'm old now, older. And, when I was a young parent, everything was paper. And then we moved to everything was emails. And now everybody's email box stresses them out. And so we've moved to a proliferation of apps that we can use to communicate with parents, text messages, and all those things are great. And yet, despite engaging on 100 different fronts, there's always information that falls through the gaps.
Sure.
So, do I have the solution? No. I'm not a communications expert. I think that there's always room for improvement, and I think that that's something that we should take seriously if parents are saying that they don't feel that the communication is good.
Sure.
But I can't tell you today that I have, the silver bullet on this issue.
Okay, so essentially, if there is an issue, have them tell you what the issue is and be responsive kind of thing.
Yeah, always be responsive.
Okay, perfect. So imagine you have served, your terms. You're at the end of your term. What would you want to look back on it as your accomplishments?
Wow. Well, I think so. To get back to literacy, I would like to see year-over-year improvement on those test scores.
Okay.
I think I would like to see a meaningful, measurable reduction in the gap in educational outcomes. And let's think of one more. I think, if anything, what I really want to do is I want to deepen the community's appreciation for Bloomington Public Schools.
Okay.
Because like I said, I'm a big cheerleader for public schools. I'm a cheerleader for Bloomington Public Schools in general. And I think what we have is excellent. And I think that if we can, kind of see it measured in surveys of, do you like the education you receive here? Which, by the way, actually, Bloomington Public Schools surveys well amongst parents.
Mm-hmm.
But can we get that number higher? Can we get that number higher with students? Can we get it higher with parents? And can we get it to a point where everybody thinks of Bloomington Public Education first when it's time to educate their kids?
Awesome, perfect. How would you go about ensuring that Bloomington is facing forward, like future ready for what's coming down the pipeline?
Yeah. One thing I like about Bloomington Public Schools, and we came here from a different school district, is continuity and stability at the leadership level, at the district administration level, at the site level. And I think that that is an excellent way to prepare yourselves and make yourselves future ready. Because if you're constantly bouncing between leadership, if you're constantly training new people, if you don't have those succession plans in mind, then that's less time that you can spend future facing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really Bloomington is well positioned right now to be that sort of resilient, forward-looking district, because I think we have really good leadership, and I think that we have strong continuity at the board level. And yeah, I just think that allows you to spend time thinking about what's next.
All right, perfect. So as a kind of closing question, tell me about your message to the Bloomington residents. What do you think you represent best and want to communicate to people that are sending their students to school in Bloomington?
Yeah, well, again, I'm a cheerleader for the schools. I believe in public education. I believe that it's important that our children attend public schools. I believe that it's important that our schools are well functioning and well funded. And I want to work for the next 4 years tirelessly to make sure, as I said, that they are equitable, that they're inclusive, that they're strong for all our students, that our students report high degrees of satisfaction and engagement across all levels. So,
right.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, Ted, thank you very much for joining
Thanks,
me.
Alex.
Did I miss anything? Was there anything else you wanted to cover that I didn't go over?
Nope. This was great.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right.